if Senator Van Hollen can get down there, if the president can get up here and get to the White House, then I don't understand why we can't get Abrego up out of there.
In this clip, Tyler Cohen takes a look at comments made by Jasmine Crockett and also has a conversation with Senator Chris Van Hollen. Now, Jasmine Crockett has been on my radar a lot recently, and I'm a fan of Jasmine Crockett's. But this video at large is really about the conversation between Tyler Cohen and Senator Chris Van Hollen, who recently went to visit Abrego and came back. And of course, the Trump administration is saying, well, we can't get him back. Well, let's take a look at this together. Let's listen to what Tyler Cohen has to say, and then I want to know what you think in the comments, but let's check it out.
I mean, we know that they admitted that they were wrong. Now they're trying to double back and say, well, he's this terrible person and all this kind of stuff. But here's the reality. As far as I'm concerned, he's a lot less criminal than the person that's sitting in the White House, because last time I checked, he doesn't have any criminal convictions. I don't even think he has any outstanding cases versus the guy that still had cases pending when he was sworn in on January 20th. And also has 34 felony convictions. So listen, I don't want to hear anything from the Republican Party about how they're trying to keep us safe when their fearless leader is actually the biggest criminal thus far that we have seen, because I haven't seen anybody with a rap sheet that looks like the president's.
That was Jasmine Crockett reminding America that Kilmer Abrego Garcia is a lot less criminal than the person that is sitting in the White House. If we're going to baselessly deport people who have been convicted of no crime to foreign gulags, then what about people who have, and I'm just picking a random number here, 34 criminal convictions? Do they go to max security foreign prisons too, or only the innocent people with brown skin? In fact, this administration's actions have been rife with hypocrisy. We've got all these Republicans defending the deportation of somebody who has got zero due process and who has zero evidence against him, because even the suggestion that he has committed a crime is apparently enough for them. And yet, can anybody explain to me why the Trump administration also intervened to bring Andrew Tate and his brother back to the United States, despite being charged with rape and trafficking? I wonder if that has anything to do with the fact that the Tates are avowed Trump supporters, truly one of life's great mysteries. And of course, all of this underscores the fact that while Donald Trump and his mouthpieces whine about lawfare and two systems of justice, they are the ones perpetuating this reality. It is them who benefit from a legal system that is wholly incapable of contending with somebody who abuses it like Donald Trump. It's them who wield it against political opponents, and it is them who shield it from their political allies. The Tate brothers won't face justice because they support this White House. Eric Adams won't face justice because he supports this White House. Matt Gaetz won't face justice because he supports this White House. Florida lawmaker Corey Mills, accused of assaulting a woman in his apartment, won't have his arrest warrant signed by Trump-loving D.C. prosecutor Ed Martin because he supports this White House. That is how it works in Trump's America. So long as you put on your little red MAGA hat, you are protected against those pesky inconveniences like having to abide by the law. And yet, all the while, if you're someone like Kilmer Abrego Garcia, well then, even if you've done nothing wrong, even if there's no evidence against you, you might still face the prospect of life in a foreign gulag because Trump views you not as a person, but as a symbol for his larger fight. Let's be clear, Trump knows full well that there is no evidence against Garcia, but he also knows that he represents the broader immigration fight. And so Trump feels he has to barrel ahead anyway because, again, he doesn't view Garcia as a person, but rather as a symbol. And if he looks weak here by acknowledging his own mistake, and yes, it was a mistake as evidenced by what the DOJ said in court, then he thinks that that'll undermine his immigration effort more broadly, and he couldn't possibly have that. And so instead, he views his only option here as doubling down on the illegal and baseless deportation of a legal American resident to a foreign gulag because apparently that man's life is worth less than Donald Trump's ego. And at the end of the day, nothing is more important than making sure that the God King doesn't feel insecure. And look, it's clear what the Trump administration is trying to do by obfuscating and attacking Garcia's character, but let's not lose sight of the forest through the trees here. Even the White House itself admitted that he was sent to El Salvador in error, and so that should be it. The fact that they are still doubling down even after they admitted they messed up is a testament to the utter lawlessness of this administration.
That's absolutely right. And if you start to feel the brain fog, take a second, take a deep breath, and step back and look at the bald-faced hypocrisy This is a perfect example of it.
And that's a point that Crockett herself made on Twitter, writing, "So they could figure out how to get the president of El Salvador to the White House, and he couldn't manage to help his new bestie follow a court order by giving Kilmar Abrego Garcia a ride to the DMV. I'm grateful to Senator Van Hollen for his actual leadership in this moment. That is not partisanship. This is about right versus wrong. The administration admitted they were wrong, and multiple courts have also said they were wrong, and to blatantly ignore a court order is an attack on all orders in this country, aka a constitutional crisis." In fact, I spoke with Senator Van Hollen himself while he was in El Salvador about the fact that this White House is ushering in a constitutional crisis right now. Here's what he had to say. "We had the Supreme Court rule unanimously for the release of Garcia. Then that gets kicked back to the district court to be able to facilitate that release. Trump appeals that up to the Fourth Circuit panel. They agree with both the Supreme Court and the federal district court. And so there's nowhere else for Trump to go now. And so what happens here? I mean, is this pretty much the Trump administration getting ready to tee up a true legal constitutional crisis where there is no other avenue to appeal? Because if you appeal from the Fourth Circuit back up to the Supreme Court's not going to change their mind. They've already spoken on this issue. And so this is a moment where we either have to recognize that we have an executive branch that is bound by legal rulings that have been handed down by the Supreme Court, or we have an executive branch that views itself as above these rulings that are handed down by the Supreme Court.
Well, that's right. Look, it's possible the Trump administration will appeal the Fourth Circuit ruling, because what Judge Zinnes just did was she said to the administration, the Supreme Court has ruled 9-0 that you have an obligation to facilitate the return of Abrego Garcia. It's pretty clear they're not doing that. And so what she did was begin to order depositions, right, where Trump administration's officials are going to have to testify under oath as to what they're doing to facilitate his return. Well, they don't like that. And so they appealed that decision to the Fourth Circuit. And the Fourth Circuit is now unanimously, the panel of the Fourth Circuit has backed up Judge Zinnes with very powerful language. So they may try to take it back to the Supreme Court, but after that 9-0 ruling, I don't see how the Supreme Court has any alternative but to back up the Fourth Circuit and the federal district court judge, because they are violating. I mean, the Trump administration is violating the due process rights of this individual, and that opens the door. That just opens the door to violating the due process rights of everyone who lives in America. So this is a very important moment for the future of our Constitution and for our country.
And that's the point we can't miss. That if we allow Trump to violate the due process rights of one person, who, by the way, is a legal resident, then that opens the door for him to violate the rights of every American. So I get that there are folks who are nervous about even having a conversation about immigration because immigration is an issue on which Trump pulls strongly. But if we do not speak up now when he is violating one person's rights, then we don't get to act surprised when he violates other people's rights, when he violates American citizens' rights. This is the moment where we show him that he is not all powerful, that he cannot violate the law, that he cannot defy the other branches of government. If we don't fight now, he becomes emboldened in exactly the same way he's become emboldened at the hands of law firms and universities and tech billionaires and media outlets. If you do not fight back, Trump learns that he can dominate you, that he owns you. And while those entities and people and companies might have been content to capitulate to save their own asses, this is one area where we can't afford to back down. Trump himself likes to say that we're a country of laws. Now is the time to stand up and fight for them, or be willing to allow this country to succumb to his autocratic impulses.
Yep, Brian Tyler Cohen has a way with the words. Let me know what you think in the comments.